Thank you very much. You mentioned the Iran conversations between the President and the Prime Minister yesterday. Can you confirm what the Iranian Foreign Minister, Arachi, said, which is that Steve Witkoff, the Special Envoy, will lead those talks, and that they will be indirect, not direct, as President Trump said? Or is there some clarification you can give us as to how the State Department sees these talks being composed?
Well, I can't confirm anything an Iranian authority is going to say. What I can tell you is what the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has said, is that Mr. Witkoff, Special Envoy Witkoff, will be there. So he'll be present. And when it comes to the description of the event, I would refer you back to the President's remarks. That's who I rely on.
Can you define what is meant by direct talks? Because
the
Iranians are insisting at the foreign minister level that they are indirect.
That's nice for the Iranians. I would refer back to the President of the United States, President Donald John Trump.
I have one more subject.
Yes, of course. You can also have more questions, absolutely.
The other thing I wanted to ask you about, colleges, universities around the country are saying that with little or no notice, to them or their students, there have been massive cancellations of student visas without explanations. In some cases, some of the students have said they are for reckless driving citations. These are not students who are involved in protests. Not that that would necessarily justify it, but just can you clarify the way these are being canceled? Is there a process to determine? Is there a threshold for determining why a student visa would be canceled, and what are the criteria?
Well, we've never gone into the details of the visa process. We don't discuss individual visas because of the privacy issues involved. We don't go into statistics or numbers. We don't go into the rationale for what happens with individual visas. What we can tell you is that the department revokes visas every day in order to secure our borders and to keep our communities safe, and will continue to do so. The criteria, as it is applied appropriately. And that's the extent that is what we've been dealing with, right? And we've never been, and we're not inclined to answer those specifics, but I think the American people know, as we're seeing, that we take the border seriously, we take the visa process seriously, and the number of revocations, I can say, is dynamic, which is why we don't give those numbers out. Again, we're not going to give statistics, only because of always the continuing fluidity of the situation when it comes to visas and the reasons they are revoked, which is personal and private.
And just the last question on this.
You're beating Matt Lee when it comes to 2 being 4 now.
But the Secretary's announcement, the announcement that came out the other day about the cancellation of passports holders from South Sudan, when South Sudan is in some considerable conflict right now between their leaders. There's a great deal of turmoil and violence in that country. What is the reason, more broadly, not individual reasons, for canceling visas to passport holders from South Sudan when there is so much danger for anybody going back?
I have a few things for you on that. So enforcing our immigration laws is critically important to the national security and public safety of the United States. Every country must accept the return of its citizens in a timely manner when another country, including the United States, seeks to remove them. As South Sudan's transitional government has failed to fully respect this principle by not permitting the entry of an individual that they had confirmed and documented as a citizen, the United States Department of State has taken actions to revoke visas held by South Sudanese passport holders and restrict further issuance of visas to prevent entry into the United States by South Sudanese passport holders. We will be prepared to review these actions when South Sudan is in full cooperation, and Secretary Rubio has said it is the responsibility of each nation to take back their citizens who are illegally present in the United States in a serious and expeditious manner. We are unwavering in our commitment to end illegal immigration and bolster America's border security. So this is we understand also that South Sudan has made a statement that they've agreed finally to accept the individual in question, and we are aware of that remark. And this is, they committed on April 8th to grant the individual permission to enter their country, and we look forward to the government of South Sudan following through on that remark. And we will then be prepared to review, once again, these actions when South Sudan is in full cooperation.
Sure. And then the Saudi foreign minister is visiting the United States. Will Secretary Rubio meet with him, and if so, what does he hope to achieve from that?
Yes, in fact, he will be. He'll be meeting with him tomorrow.
And what does he hope to achieve from that meeting?
I'm not going to get ahead of the Secretary of State, but we look forward to seeing him tomorrow. All right. Yes. Hi.
Getting back to Iran, part of the reason that the administration cited in 2018, the first Trump administration, from withdrawing from the Iran nuclear deal is that it wasn't comprehensive enough. It didn't cover militias. It didn't cover the missile program and a bunch of other of Iran's activities. Is the expectation that this new agreement would have to cover that?
Well, this is a meeting that's happening, right, on Saturday. There's a meeting. There's no negotiations, right? This is a dynamic where the president has made very clear, and certainly the secretary has made very clear, that Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and it's just that I think is the focus right now, the nature of what's happened, and Iran's current situation. I think the president's remarks yesterday speak for themselves. That and he's committed to diplomacy. He's spoken about wanting to have a deal with Iran to get this done. And now it's up to Iran, and if they don't want to, it will be very, very bad for them. So those are the two, I think, clear options here.
This is an initial sort of feel out as to whether to progress.
I think it's touching base. Yes, indeed. But again, it's not a negotiation; it's a meeting, and that's what the commitment is.
And finally, you mentioned that Steve Witkoff is going. Is he leading the delegation?
I can't speak to that, but he will be there. Yes, sir.
Thanks. Can I just follow up from Rich? We were saying it's a meeting rather than a negotiation.
Correct.
The Iranian government has said that it's a matter of they want sanctions relief. Is that something that the United States is prepared to discuss either at this meeting or?
Well, again, I'm not going to get ahead of any kind of conversation or process, diplomatic considerations. Certainly, I can't get ahead of a negotiation because this isn't one. So that's not something I can speak to.
In terms of the goal, I know that you said that not prohibiting Iran from having a nuclear weapon, but in terms of how that's achieved, I mean, there's been some talk in the administration. Is this complete dismantlement of the nuclear program, or is it just verification that's not going to go for nuclear for military ends? Is there an end goal that the administration has when it comes to whether it's complete dismantlement?
Again, I can't speak to their considerations, the contemplations they have, the discussions they have. We do know that there is something very, very clear and distinct that is on the table that needs to be accomplished, and they're certainly, see now, because I have so many opinions, and you're waiting, Sean is waiting for me to kind of, we all have opinions, but what I can tell you is that the very specific thing that needs to be accomplished, which would make the world a much safer place, is to make sure that Iran never gets a nuclear weapon, that there is no room around that fact. And that is something worthy of focusing on at this moment. Yes, Nadia?
Thank you, Tammy. I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
On the Iran...
No, you have seven. I'm sorry.
No, two.
All right.
Only two, I promise you. On the Iran talks, is this meeting primarily focusing on preventing Iran from acquiring nuclear weapons, or are they going to discuss Iran's support for proxies in the region, considering there were reports that Iran stopped supporting the Houthis, or alleged not supporting the Houthis? That's my first question.
Right. Again, this is not a negotiation. There aren't things being negotiated in that regard. This has been described to me as something that is a matter of determining what's possible in the conversations. It's a touchback, and that's the extent of what will be happening. Yeah, yes.
Second question.
Yes.
I have
Oh, the second, that's right. I'm
okay.
sorry. Go ahead.
That's okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Second question on Gaza, actually. The situation is horrific. There is no water, there is no electricity, there is no food for almost 1 month. This is a gross violation of international humanitarian law, as you know. what is the United States is doing to alleviate the suffering of civilians in Gaza? And second, since you talked about the meeting between Netanyahu and the secretary, any prospect of a ceasefire that was discussed yesterday?
Our efforts to bring back the ceasefire that we were happy to have at the beginning of this, before Hamas turned its back on the ceasefire, is something that the administration, that the President and Secretary Rubio have said we would want back. There's nothing that is cut off in the sense of where we go from here. It is clear. And the effort, as we are asked every briefing, which is appropriate because of the nature of the issue, is none of us, we're engaging in this to stop the suffering. When there is a resumption of a conflict, and the nature of this conflict, with so many hostages also still being held, it of course disrupts the humanitarian aid. And that is something that concerns all of us and that we seek to change. There is one group that has broken ceasefires, that continues for generations to move the suffering, and that is Hamas. It's a remarkable dynamic where you have multiple players here that are working and constantly making an effort to stop the carnage and the suffering and to stop the conflict on the ground so that humanitarian aid can flow. And Hamas seems to want nothing to do with that. They continue to go back to creating a framework of victims constantly. So I would say that obviously our effort is to get a ceasefire on the ground again, specifically so we can get aid into the area, specifically so that we can discuss what the region understands, which is the need for a new way to move us out of this horrible cycle. And obviously that's what we've been dealing with for generations. President Trump is determined to end it once and for all, as is Secretary Rubio. They have one term, and this is why things have to move quickly. It never stops. Their efforts in the Middle East and on Gaza never stop. And that's what we hope for. And the results, hopefully, obviously, is for peace on the ground, for humanitarian aid, and for Gazans and everyone in the region to have a future to look forward to that they can trust. Yes?
Tammy, continuing on the two-question trend. First of all, an American teenager was shot and killed, and 2 others were shot in the West Bank. Has the U.S. called on the Israeli government to investigate their killings?
We are certainly aware of that dynamic. We send condolences to the families involved. These were teenagers. There is an investigation that is going on. We are aware of the reports from the IDF that this was a counterterrorism act. We need to learn more about the nature of what happened on the ground, but we're aware of that. All right?
Follow up on that question.
Yes, certainly, Saeed.
Thank you very kindly. Now, when Shireen Abu Akleh was killed by the Israelis a couple of years ago, the American security coordinator was involved in investigating, and they drew a conclusion. My question to you is twofold on this issue regarding the boy. First of all, is the American security coordinator for the West Bank, is he involved in this thing? Is he going to follow up? And my second question, has there been any calls to the family from this building or from the U.S. ambassadors and so on to learn the circumstances?
Well, again, there's things on the ground. We don't have the complete picture of what was going on the ground. I know that we're aware of the reports. We certainly always are engaged in the nature of what's happening with American citizens, and that's the case here, and that's the extent of what I'm going to say. Yes, sir. Right there. No, yes, go ahead. Yeah.
Thank you. Appreciate it. 2 questions. I'll ask them back to back. Number one, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres announced earlier today that he would not participate, the UN would not participate in the resumption of IDF humanitarian aid delivery into Gaza because he felt the parameters were not sufficient, not appropriate. Would the State Department consider, or planning even, to step in to aid the IDF in humanitarian aid delivery, given the importance that the State Department is placing on that particular area? And the second question is, what does the State Department view as a positive role for Turkey in Syria?
Well, first of all, the reason there's aid issues and movement issues in Gaza is because of the resumption of the conflict. So I know we work through our partners on the ground. The fact is that if it was safe to move aid through Gaza, it would move. And at this point, that's clearly an assessment that it hasn't been safe. So I'm not going to speak about or presume to talk about what the State Department would do. Those are the decisions of the Secretary and of the President, of the highest levels of this government, about how to move through that framework. So that's not something that I'll speculate on. And your second question was?
What does the State Department view as a positive role for Turkey in Syria, given the President's affirmation of his
yes,
President Erdogan?
I think I know a great deal, I think as we all do, about Secretary Marco Rubio, but I'm not going to presume that I know how to speak for him when it comes to the notion of diplomatic decisions or maneuverings when it comes to the nature of what's going to be best for a region like that. Turkey is certainly an ally and a friend, but that is a conversation that belongs between leaders. Yes. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Benjamin Netanyahu offered a video statement in which he outlined the terms that Israel would accept for an agreement with Iran. Said it had to be a Libya-style agreement where we would go in, quote, blow up the facilities, dismantle the equipment under American supervision and American execution. Is that a position that Secretary Rubio agrees with? Is it a precondition by Israel that the U.S. is willing to accept?
I can't discuss that because I wasn't in that room. I certainly don't speak for Israel or for the Prime Minister and his remarks about what's important to him. So I would leave that to the nature of conversations at that level, certainly not something for me to comment on here.
When the President says that he would rather resolve this through diplomacy rather than the alternative,
sure.
Can you just spell out what is the alternative? Is it a U.S. military strike on Iran?
Well, I guess that's something that everyone's supposed to consider, right? The President has made himself very clear about what he prefers, and that's diplomacy and making deals. And he's been very successful at that. The world, though, as we've seen, of course, seems to devolve into violence, and that is something that he clearly has. Ending that violence and changing that trajectory is something that President Trump has made a hallmark of his this last term of his, and it is a remarkable commitment. So I think that speculating or hypothesizing in a world where it's dangerous when it comes to real life and what's happening is not certainly something that any of us should do. But it's I think, an important reminder that President Trump not only talks about diplomacy and what he prefers, but he acts on it as well.